We say welcome to your joy, your hope, your pride. We say welcome to your grief, your fear, your anger, and the parts of you that are not yet ready to be seen and heard. Welcome to them as well. Good morning, it's great to see you. I'm Dave Cook, your service coordinator for today. Our minister, the Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley, will be giving the reflection. If you're new to North Chapel, welcome. If you're visiting, please consider signing the guest book at the back of the sanctuary. We have hearing assistance devices and large print versions of the hymns and order of service at the back table should you need them. Will Tatum Barnes be?
Yes, he's here.
He will. Okay. He'll be leading spiritual exploration this Sunday. After the service, we invite you to visit with each other. There'll be lemonade on the porch, I believe. You'll find announcements and upcoming events in the order of service and on the church website. I believe Ann Dean has an announcement.
Good morning, everyone. Isn't it gorgeous outside? And wouldn't you love to have a sip of lemonade and then go over to the permaculture garden and pull a few weeds? Because we would love to have your help this morning. We have a full load of mulch ready to put down on the garden, but we do need those weeds to disappear first. So if you can bend over, please come help. Thank you.
The theme for the month of June declares that the rose is the flower that marks the month of June, beautiful and sweet. The rose is unique, but it's hardly the only one that is flowering these days. Apropos of flowers, here are some words from Walt Whitman. Simple and fresh and fair from winter's close emerging, as if no artifice of fashion, business, politics has ever been, forth from its sunny nook of sheltered grass, innocent, golden, calm as the dawn, the spring's first dandelion shows its trustful face. I'm happy to see your trustful faces this morning. Dandelions originated in Eurasia before the last ice age, and they spread through North America prior to human agriculture. So I guess they're not invasive. They were named after lions because their lion-toothed leaves healed so many ailments, great and small: baldness, dandruff, toothache, sores, fevers, rotting gums, weakness, lethargy, and depression. Well, we may be 6 weeks now past their peak at winter's close, but I love dandelions. They are so vibrant when they bloom, and there are so many. And they're so medicinal, dusting green fields with yellow flowers. And then suddenly, it seems to me, they turn into gray puffballs. It's like a second blooming without the color. Well, my life resembles that of the dandelion. First, I was young and vital, though not blonde. And now I'm a puffball. You know, I think, well, maybe I can be useful too. Maybe not for curing baldness or dandruff, but for something in this world. Maybe that's where my second blooming is. We'll now have a time of meditation.
Good morning. Auspicious day, Father's Day. My father grew up in Morocco and he was from Corsica. I wish he was here. Maybe he is. I'm going to read a poem that I wrote. I long to see her unharmed, breathing air the earth is meant to breathe. I follow the poet because I want to see her free. Words make a light path to the country I long to see, breathing oxygen of cerulean skies that all of the earth is meant to breathe, unharmed. I will call her she, her feminine pronouns her, hers. After violence, what does it mean, thriving? Does she fold into herself, onto herself? And after, long after the assaults, I follow the poet. He tells me to write. At my blue desk, a candle's flame, there's a window. The air smells like snow arriving. An army ravages her people and the land they belong to, the country she is. When I was a child, my father and I talked. I miss him. She exists. She is a country, my father would say. In Morocco, he fought to protect Arab children from the French rampage. In Paris, I never thought twice when I wore my black and gray and white scarf, patterns of olive trees, passages from the sea onto her land. I am not Palestinian, but French, American, from Corsica. I follow the poet. He is breaking my heart each day. When the violence ends, how will she breathe in her restored cerulean sky? Glimpse sun on her Mediterranean waters. Thank you.
Over the course of his gorgeous, decades-long career as a musician, Harry Chapin wrote about beautiful stories. He wrote stories about love, and he wrote poems about family, and he wrote lyrics about his personal take on the heavens. He wrote, "He was the sun, burning bright and brittle, and she was the moon, shining back his light a little. He was a shooting star, and she was softer and more slowly. He could not make things possible, but she could make them holy." He sang these words like a prayer. I often find myself praying these days when I'm on my hands and knees in the garden, when I'm playing music for someone. Every time I come to North Chapel, I pray. Not in the traditional sense, although I do that too, but not nearly as often. I pray so often to find and keep the strength I need to listen to the daily news. I pray to find the means, the habits, the practices, the rituals, the art that I need in order to understand the size of what's happening in the world. How can one stand in the pulpit of a sanctuary and acknowledge that more than 37,000 lives have been lost in Israel, in Gaza, and in the West Bank? Alternatively, how can one stand in the pulpit of a sanctuary and not acknowledge that? I can't answer either of these questions without breaking my own heart, without acknowledging that my heart is broken. Our heart is broken. So I pray a lot these days. I pray in the garden and I pray when I sing. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. Welcome to the beauty of the morning sun in flight. Welcome to the dreamers and the seekers, bold and bashful in their quest. Welcome to the wanderers and the worshipers here to give their souls a rest. Welcome to the darkness and the light. Welcome to the open and to the broken parts that live within us all, blissfully imperfect, just like you and me. Blessed and beloved beneath the stars above, caring, compassionate, tender, and powerful, held, whole, and honored by a love that knows no bounds. Let no single heart from out the whole be gone from us, not gone from the widening circles of our affection, but held, whole, and honored by a love that knows no bounds. To all souls, I say good morning. It's good to be together. Today is Sunday, June the 16th, and the title of this morning's reflection is Sing, Peace, Power, Blossom, Gaza, O Israel. It's not an answer. It is only a most humble beginning, a public turning towards in an intentional way, and it's coming far too late. And for a good reason, but here we are. This morning's reflection is about the importance of art and the importance of singing in the face of tragedy. The power of raising up our voices, the power of lifting up our choice to cleave to our principles, and to watch as they come alive all around us, especially now as summer days are stretching out into their full measure. Art asks us such brave and powerful questions. In a poem entitled Summer Day, Mary Oliver asks brave and powerful questions after admitting something sacred to us. She writes, I don't know exactly what prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? One can really lean into questions like this. One can really live into the answers. That's why it is so good to really think about poetry. I used to think that poetry had to be cute, or that it had to be sentimental, or that it had to be beautiful somehow. I used to think that if I wrote down a handful of words that achieved even one of these, I thought that I would be on my way to being a poet, an artist. If my poetry is good, I thought, then I must be good as well. The poetry that I valued was closely linked to a reward. I used to write poems because I wanted the social credit for it. I still do, kind of. But I'm more honest with myself. I had a bit of a secret exchange going inside of my mind, an exchange that cheapened the value of art and that closed down a part of me, closed down the heart of me that maybe could have been a bit more open. I didn't have the courage that I needed back then. And I didn't know about what I needed that I didn't have. I needed to be in loving community in order to grow, in order to learn the things that I needed to become my mature self. Don't worry, it didn't happen. And I will let you know immediately if it ever does. It takes a lot of courage to become oneself. And once you do, the poetry starts to come. Warning. The poetry that starts to come tends to be really bad poetry at first. My first poem was about a grilled Midwestern sandwich. It was about a Reuben, a sandwich with a bit of a history, as it turns out. The Reuben sandwich is the only entirely invented sandwich. It won the National Sandwich Contest in 1956, and it was invented by Rubin Kolakowski during a poker game in Omaha. It won first prize. Aren't you glad that you came to church on Father's Day to learn about this? Now, I won't share this first poem with you, although I do remember it. I will share what I shared before, that it takes a lot of courage to become oneself. Once one does, if one does, the poetry starts to come. It's not important to judge or to evaluate the poetry. It is important to let the poetry allow us to become alive. Now, do you think about poetry? Do you really think about it? Do you ever stop and slow down and really allow yourself to think about poetry? Poetry is essential. Art is essential. Singing is essential. They protect what is most tender and true within us, and they keep us alive. They make life possible sometimes. They make life survivable sometimes. They help us to ask the hardest questions. They help us to answer the hardest questions. Is it possible for us to cry out a path to beauty that resides within us? The answer is yes, but how we do this is challenging. Is it possible for us to sing out our way to peace? The answer is yes, but we must be brave. It takes a lot of courage to do such things. Do you have such courage? A young student named Todd Anderson stood up in front of all the other students in class. Just like the rest of his classmates, Todd was a first-year student at a prep school somewhere in New England. Unlike the rest of his classmates, Todd Anderson was unprepared for class. The night before, for homework, everyone was given the assignment to have written a poem by the following day and to share that poem publicly. And for some reason, Todd didn't do it. He failed to complete the assignment. The class was a poetry class. They were expected to write poetry. There was no pressure to be good, no expectation that they would all become famous poets. They were only studying the greats. They weren't trying to become them. On that day, they were focusing on the poetry of Walt Whitman. Do you know the poetry of Walt Whitman? Leaves of Grass, Oh Captain, My Captain, The Song of Myself, 52. It's a famous one. The spotted hawk swoops by and accuses me. He complains of my gab and my loitering. I too am not a bit tame. I too am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yawp from the rooftops of the world. This is Whitman, this tameless wild man who sends his yawp, his yell, his fearless and untamable, untranslatable cry above the world. So Todd hadn't done the assignment, and the teachers called him to stand before the class. And then the two of them did the assignment right there and then. It was enough to give you chills. The teacher pointed out the wall space above the blackboard, and he said, "There's a picture of Walt Whitman up there. What does he remind you of? Just think. Don't think. Just answer." Todd answered. He said it reminded him of a madman. "What kind of madman?" the teacher asked. "Don't think about it, just answer." The teacher was pushing him, forcing him out of his comfort zone and scaring him out of his mind. Todd was shy. Of course he was that. He was crazy and he was important, but something was holding Todd back. The teacher wanted Todd to speak from his soul, and Todd answered. He was a crazy madman. The teacher said, "No, you can do better than that. Free your mind, use your imagination, and say the first thing that pops into your head, even if it's total gibberish." And Todd Anderson said he was a sweaty-toothed madman. And the teacher found this impressive. And he pushed him further, gently and with intention, until the body and the breath and the sounds and the words and the images and the ideas began to flow freely. And Todd sang out, "I close my eyes, and his image floats before me. A sweaty-toothed madman with a stare that pounds my brain. His hands reach out and choke me, and all the time he's mumbling truth like a blanket that always leaves your feet cold. You push it, stretch it, but it will never be enough. You kick at it, beat it, but it will never cover any of us. From the moment we enter crying to the moment we leave dying, it will only cover your face as you wail and cry and scream. This was the soul's cry of the one they called Todd Anderson, a first-year student in a prep school in New England back in 1959. This passage is from a film called Dead Poets Society, a film that went into production in 1988. Todd Anderson was played by a young actor whose name is Ethan Hawke. Ethan Hawke himself was only 18 years old when things got underway. And at 18 years of age, he was able to capture something that was so mature and so timeless. If we were all in that class right now and asked to stand alone in front of everyone else, what would be the tameless cry of your soul? What would drive your passion? What would fuel your sacred rage? And more importantly, what precious and innocent thing would that sacred rage protect? When Todd answered that question for himself, he stood up on his desk and he cried out, quoting Walt Whitman, he said, "Oh, Captain, my Captain." This is the image on the cover of your orders of service. He said, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," and he set the captives free, the loving spirit captives that are trapped inside of all of us. Whitman was driven by the passions of the day. He was driven by the costs and by the consequences of civil war. In fact, his poem, "O Captain, My Captain," was written for Abraham Lincoln after the deed was done. "O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack. The prize we sought is won. The port is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steely keel, the vessel grim and daring. But oh, heart, 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 oh, the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead." Whitman lived from 1819 to 1892. He died in Camden, New Jersey, 60 miles away from where I was raised. If Whitman were alive today, what would he cry out in the middle of the night? What would he proclaim from the rooftops of the world? A better question, simply because we are alive and Whitman is not. What shall we cry out in the middle of the night? What shall we proclaim standing barefoot above the town? What shall we cry out from the soul of our shared heart? Were it up to me, I would cry out, "Sing, peace, power, blossom, Gaza or Israel." I would sing for Sudan and for Ukraine. I would sing out from the whole of my heart that I don't know how to heal. I would sing out from the hole in my soul that sometimes forgets who we are. A poet writes, "A true Arab knows how to catch a fly in his hands," my father would say, proving it, cupping the buzzer instantly, while the host with the swatter stared. In spring, our palms peel like snakes. True Arabs believed watermelon could heal 50 different ways. I changed these to fit the occasion. Years before, a girl knocked, wanted to see the Arab. I said we didn't have one. After that, my father told me who he was. Shihab, shooting star, a good name borrowed from the sky. Once I said, "When we die, we give it back?" He said, "That is what a true Arab would say." Today, the headlines clot in my blood. A little Palestinian dangles a truck on the front page. Homeless fig, this tragedy with a terrible root is too big for us. What flag can we wave? I wear a flag of stone and seed, table mat stitched in blue. I call my father. We talk around the news. It is too much for him. Neither of his two languages can reach it. I drive into the country to find sheep, cows, to plead with the air. Who calls anyone civilized? Where can the crying heart graze? What does a true Arab do now? Long before the violences of October 7 and beyond, the poet Naomi Shihab Nye wrote this poem that she called Blood. She wrote it back in 1995. She wrote it, I believe, to show the humanity of a people whose humanity seems sometimes forgotten. That's not the right word to use, but it's close to what I mean. Maybe the humanity of those that politically we sometimes can't afford to remember. Whatever I say, it sounds too dark, but I can't say that it isn't true. What confronts us right now is very large. It is too much for Naomi's father. Neither of his two languages could reach it. What confronts us right now may be beyond the reach of language itself, but it may not remain beyond our reach. Maybe this is why we cry. Maybe this is why we sing. Maybe this is why we pray and why we've prayed the same things for centuries. The Lord is my shepherd, I have all I need. She makes me lie down in green meadows beside still waters. She will lead, she restores my soul. Harry Chapin wrote, he was the sun, burning bright and brittle, and she was the moon, shining back his light a little. He was a shooting star. She was softer and more slowly. He could not make things possible, but she could make them holy. Harry Chapin is a good name, borrowed from the sky. When we die, we give it back. Every name given to a newborn child is a good name. When we die, we give them back. This is true for all of us. But as we live, however long we live, we have an opportunity. There is a chance before us that we might learn to make things holy. But can we actually do this? The answer is yes, but it's challenging. Is it possible? The answer is yes, but we must be brave. It takes real courage to do such things. I believe real courage starts poetically. I believe we speak courage into being. I believe that's how we make things holy. I believe that Ethan Hawke believes the same thing that I believe. Ethan Hawke played the part of Todd Anderson in Dead Poets Society in 1989. He played the student who didn't do his homework, who improvised a poem in the front of the class about a sweaty-toothed madman named Walt Whitman. Todd improvised that poem in a movie that debuted 35 years ago now, about a poet who died 97 years before that and still lives in us. It takes a lot of courage to do certain things, to admit sometimes to being unprepared, to allow the self to open to the full reach of our humanity, to reject the violences that do their best to limit the full reach of the soul, to express oneself honestly with love and deepest compassion. The enemies of truth are counting on us to be less than brave. Recently, maybe a month ago or so, Ethan Hawke was interviewed online and reflected about the power of the arts. He said that art is not a luxury, it's actually sustenance. We need it. Do you think human creativity matters? Well, most people don't spend a lot of time thinking about poetry until their father dies, or they go to a funeral, or you lose a child, or somebody breaks your heart, they don't love you anymore, and all of a sudden you're desperate, trying to make sense out of this life. Has anybody ever felt this bad before? Or the inverse. Something great happens, you meet somebody and your heart explodes and you love them so much that you can't even see straight and you're dizzy. Did anybody feel this good before? And what is happening to me? This is when art is not a luxury, it's actually sustenance. We need it. And the thing that worries me sometimes whenever you talk about creativity is because we have to feel, we feel like it kind of has to be nice, you know? Or it's warm, or something that's pleasant. It's not. It's vital. It's the way we heal each other. In our singing, our song, in telling our story, in inviting you to say, hey man, listen to me, and I will listen to you. We're starting a dialogue. And we start to witness each other's common humanity. And when we do this, there's a healing that happens. Before taking powerful stands on things that are happening around the world, before making surefire appeals to righteousness that isn't very wise, before speaking out about cultural and political and religious vulnerabilities without having first taken down at least some of my own defenses, and before urgency and anxiety and fear and anger hijack the story of sorrow, the story within us, which may be the best way forward. And before another person of any age dies in conflict in Israel and Gaza, in the West Bank or in Sudan, in Ukraine or in Russia, anywhere around the world, I long for the wisdom dialogue that the psalmists wrote about. I long for the vision, for the witness, and for the honoring of our common humanity. I long for a healing process that helps us to begin. Parts of me are at a loss, and I don't know what to do. But I believe that parts of us are at a loss and longing for solutions that have not yet been fully brought into being, but remain murky and untried, uncertain, but possible. In closing, I'd like to share this. The Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker is one of the leading theologians in Unitarian Universalism. She was ordained United Methodist, but she holds dual fellowship. I don't think she cares about either one. I think she just cares that we love each other. She's the most compassionate thinker that I've ever known. In a book that she wrote with a woman named Rita Nakashima Brock called Proverbs of Ashes, there's a passage that I find useful. There is a ghostly skeleton that we must learn to dance with. We must find out how we can hold loss in our arms and move in rhythm with it. Proverbs of Ashes explains that we cannot truly live until we learn to embrace life's realities of betrayal, violence, suffering, and grief, and hold all of this in our arms and not be destroyed by sorrow. How we do this, I do not know. Maybe music will show us. Maybe ritual will carry us there. End quote. Maybe poetry, maybe art in general can get us started. Art not in the consumerist sense, nor art in any objective as an object of our pleasure, not art as the site of our privileged and luxurious critique, but art as sustenance, because we need it, because without it we can die. Now, I'm not romantic about this idea, I'm not naive. I simply believe, and I deeply believe, that peace is possible, not by burying the violence and the tension and the conflicts that obviously persist, but by imagining what lay beyond these things, and by bringing them into being, by making them possible, by making them holy. How we do this, I do not yet know, but a hopeful tomorrow may give for us an answer. May we be open to it. May we remain open. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Too late for the late spring. Desperately, I put in a garden this last week. I was on my hands and knees scraping through the earth when the image of that process as prayer first came to me. I was late because I needed to build a fence, because I have a team of groundhogs beneath my home. And they will eat every vegetable in my garden, as they did last year. So I built a fence to keep out that which is natural in our world, but doesn't belong in this place. Think of peace and life as a garden. into which we put precious things and around which we build a barrier to keep out that which might be dangerous and that which might cause injury, and to find a way to keep things in balance in our world in a way that keeps us healthy and alive. May it be so, blessed be. Amen.